Welcome to Teaching Truth. My name is Glenn Cartwright. Well, just as Michael Palin, the explorer, went around the world in 80 days, following in the footsteps of Phileas Fogg, we are going around the Tabernacle in 50 days, following, as it were, in the footsteps of that great Old Testament character Moses and the Israelites. And we come today as part of our introduction to our theme around the Tabernacle in 50 days to look at the purpose of the Tabernacle. For almost 500 years, the Tabernacle served as a place for God to dwell among his people. That was the primary and principal purpose of the Tabernacle, for God to dwell, but also a place where his people could commune with him. You only need to read the history of Israel to see that there was a propensity towards idolatry. And therefore the Tabernacle stood as a very visual reminder to Israel that they served and should serve the true and living God, the one who had given them through Moses the 10 Commandments. It helped keep Israel's focus away from the idol worship that was practiced by those living around them and focused their attention on the one who was to be worshipped, God himself, as they made their pilgrimage in the wilderness. The structure and service of the Tabernacle showed how a sinful people such as the Israelites could come before a holy God in worship and service, of how sacrifice for sin could be offered, and of how instruction could be received from the Word of God. Put simply, the Tabernacle was a graphic portrayal of God's redemptive program for not just Israel, but even for us today. Every aspect of the Tabernacle had a purpose. Whether it was the brazen altar where sacrifices were offered for sin, or the mediating high priest who offered the sacrificial blood on the mercy seat. Everything had a purpose. Everything in the Tabernacle had a purpose. And everything designed by God has a purpose. Everything designed by God in the Tabernacle had a purpose. Because the Tabernacle was not just a human material construction from a practical point of view, but the Tabernacle was a divine spiritual conception. There was a natural tendency in Israel's day and in Egypt's day to worship the visible, to worship the golden calf, which was a representation of God for some. And therefore there was a need to get the spirit of Egypt, as it were, the golden calf, out of Israel and to focus Israel's attention on the one who was to be worshipped. There was a purpose in it for Israel, to worship the invisible, the real God. And that reminds us that there can be no true worship unless we come to the real, true God, without that adequate salvation and that provision. And therefore, part of the purpose of the Tabernacle was to provide a place of worship, where there would be a relationship with God. We read in Exodus 25, verse 8, that I will dwell with them, I will be their God. And since the fall, since the day of Adam and Eve, man could not reach God. And therefore, as it were, the onus was on God to reach man. And therefore the tabernacle was offering that way into the holiest, that way to restore that relationship with God. A relationship with God and a revelation of God. His intention was to come to his people, to that tent of meeting that we read of in Exodus chapter 29, verse 42. The meeting place of God and man. A place of worship. But it was also a place of witness, where the presence of God was witnessed and was present. There was a visible witness through the furniture, through the different items in the tabernacle of God's invisible presence. But there was also the purity of God seen in the purpose of the tabernacle, because the tabernacle represents sacredness and holiness. The curtained enclosure in the tabernacle prevented illegal access. Holy things were not in those days for prying eyes. You couldn't just pull back the curtain willy-nilly and look into the Holy of Holies. Worshippers had to be made holy because God was holy. There was a purity and a sacredness about the tabernacle. But there was a wonderful provision also in the purpose of the tabernacle to enable man to come to God, to worship him freely, to fellowship with him fully, and to serve him acceptably. There was a purpose in the tabernacle. Join me tomorrow in Teaching Truth as we continue to look and travel around the tabernacle in 50 days.